Okay, if you're seeing this right now, in this exact moment, at this precise point in your journey, it's not random. Something in you knew to click. Something in you recognized that what I'm about to share carries weight, carries urgency, carries information your soul has been asking for, even if your mind hasn't consciously formed the question yet. And I need you to really be here for this. Not half present, not distracted, but fully here. Because what's unfolding around you right now, what's building in the invisible spaces of your life, it's significant, it's transformative. And you're standing at a threshold you didn't even know existed until this very moment. Everything is about to shift, and you need to be ready. There's an energy moving through your life right now that feels almost electric. You might have been sensing it for days or weeks. This restlessness, this feeling that something is about to happen, but you can't quite name what. This awareness that the air around you feels different, charged, like the moments before a storm breaks when everything goes still and heightened at the same time. And if you've been feeling that, if you've been unable to settle into your normal routines because something inside you knows that normal is about to be disrupted, trust that feeling because it's real, it's accurate. You're picking up on shifts that are already in motion. Some of you are about to experience breakthroughs you've been working toward for years. Doors that have been locked are suddenly vulnerable to opening. Patterns that have held you captive are loosening their grip. Energy that's been stuck is beginning to move. And all of this, all of these shifts, they're converging. They're building toward a moment of release, of transformation, of dramatic change that will reorganize your entire reality in ways you can't fully imagine from where you're standing right now. This isn't about small adjustments. This isn't about incremental progress or minor improvements. This is about explosion, about breakthrough, about the kind of change that feels both terrifying and exhilarating because it's so much bigger than what you thought was possible. And I know that might sound dramatic. I know you might be thinking, nothing that big ever happens to me, or I've heard this before and been disappointed, but something about this moment is different. Something about the convergence of factors in your life right now creates potential that hasn't existed before. And potential isn't guarantee. I want to be clear about that. What I'm describing is possibility, it's openings. It's conditions that make massive transformation more likely than it's been. But you still have to participate. You still have to be brave enough to walk through doors when they open. You still have to be willing to release what's behind you so you can reach for what's ahead. The universe can create opportunities, but you have to be the one who recognizes and seizes them. This reflection invites you to consider if everything you've been hoping for suddenly became possible, would you be ready to receive it or would fear make you hesitate? There's something happening in relationships right now that feels monumental. For some of you, someone who's been distant is about to close that distance in ways that will shock you. Someone who's been confused is about to gain clarity. Someone who's been protecting themselves is about to drop their guard and show you what they've been hiding. And when that happens, when you finally see the truth of how this person feels about you, how much you've mattered to them, even when they couldn't show it, it's going to rewrite everything you thought you understood about this connection. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, though for many of you, that's exactly what this is about. This is also about friendships that are about to deepen, family dynamics that are about to heal, professional connections that are about to open doors you didn't know existed. Because when energy shifts, when you reach these threshold moments, the transformation ripples through every area of your life. Nothing stays separate, everything is connected. And healing or breakthrough in one domain creates healing and breakthrough in others. For those of you who've been struggling financially, who've been feeling stuck or limited or unable to create the abundance you know you're capable of, something is about to crack open. An opportunity you didn't see coming, a door that appears out of nowhere, a connection that leads to resources you need, a shift in your own consciousness that allows you to finally receive what's been trying to reach you all along. And that shift, that movement from scarcity to sufficiency or even abundance, it's not just about money. It's about what money represents: freedom, choice, the ability to live according to your values rather than constantly compromising them to survive. It can seem as if you've been pushing against a wall for months or years, and suddenly the wall is about to give way. Not because you pushed harder, but because something structural shifted, because the conditions that made the wall solid have changed, because your own internal transformation has created external possibility. And when that wall comes down, when the resistance you've been fighting against suddenly disappears, you're going to move forward so fast it might be disorienting, might feel like you're in free fall, might require you to trust yourself in new ways because the old obstacles that gave you something to push against are no longer there. Some of you are about to receive news that changes everything: a phone call, an email, a conversation, a message that arrives seemingly out of nowhere, but that you recognize immediately as significant, as answer to something you've been asking, as confirmation of something you've been hoping for, as resolution to something you've been struggling with. And when that communication arrives, when you see or hear or read those words, your first response might be disbelief, might be this can't be real, or this is too good to be true, or there must be a catch. But what if it is real? What if there's no catch? What if the thing you stopped allowing yourself to hope for because hoping hurt too much is actually happening? Can you let yourself feel the joy of that without immediately looking for ways it might fall apart? Can you receive good news without bracing for bad news to follow? Can you trust that maybe, finally, things are working in your favor? This reflection invites you to consider: is less than hash 0. 5 hash is greater than. What would it take for you to accept that good things can happen to you without punishment or reversal following? There's also something here about creative breakthrough, about ideas that have been gestating, finally being ready to birth, about projects you've been procrastinating on, suddenly feeling urgent and possible, about creative blocks dissolving, about inspiration flooding in, about the part of you that makes and creates and expresses finally having the energy and clarity and courage to actually do the thing you've been talking about doing. Um, and this matters because creativity isn't just about art, it's about how you live. It's about whether you're passively receiving whatever life hands you or actively creating the reality you want to inhabit. And for those of you who felt creatively dead or stuck or blocked, who've lost touch with the part of yourself that dreams and imagines and brings new things into being, that part is waking up. That part is remembering its power. And what you're about to create, whether it's art or business or life itself, it's going to surprise you with its vitality and impact. But here's what you need to understand: explosion requires destruction. Breakthrough means something breaks. Transformation isn't gentle, it's not comfortable, it's not safe in the way we usually think about safety and what's about to explode in your life, what's about to break through. It might initially feel like chaos, like everything is falling apart, like you're losing control, like the foundation you've been standing on is crumbling beneath you. And you are, it is. But that's not failure. That's the necessary dismantling that has to happen before something new can be built. You can't construct a new life while clinging to every piece of the old one. You can't transform while maintaining all your current structures and patterns and relationships exactly as they are. Something has to give. Something has to be released. Something has to end so something else can begin. For some of you, what needs to end is a relationship. And I know that's painful. I know you've been trying to make it work. I know you've invested time and energy and hope. But what if that relationship has been the anchor keeping you from the breakthrough that's trying to happen? What if your loyalty to what isn't working is preventing you from discovering what could work? What if ending is actually the kindest thing, the bravest thing, the necessary thing? And maybe you already know this. Maybe you've known for weeks or months that it's over, but you've been avoiding the actual ending, the actual conversation, the actual grief and disruption and reorganization that comes with closure. But the longer you delay, the more energy you waste maintaining something that's already dead. And that energy, that life force you're pouring into preservation, it's needed elsewhere. It's needed for the breakthrough that can't happen while you're still tethered to what's dying. This reflection invites you to consider: what would you do with all the energy you currently spend trying to save something that doesn't want to be saved? For others, what needs to end is a pattern, a way of being that served you once but doesn't anymore, a survival strategy that kept you safe in childhood but limits you as an adult, a belief about yourself or the world that made sense given your experiences, but that isn't actually true. And breaking those patterns, releasing those beliefs, evolving beyond those survival strategies, it feels like dying, because in a way it is. The version of you that needed those things is dying so a new version can emerge. And that death, that transformation, it's not something you can control or manage or make comfortable. You just have to let it happen. You have to be willing to not know who you are for a while, to feel unsteady, to question everything, to exist in the liminal space between who you were and who you're becoming without rushing to resolution, without immediately trying to establish a new identity to replace the one that's dissolving. There's also something here about forgiveness, about releasing grudges you've been carrying, about making peace with people who hurt you not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to stop carrying the weight, about recognizing that holding on to anger or resentment or the need for revenge, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only hurts you. It only keeps you tethered to the past. It only prevents the breakthrough that's trying to happen. It can seem as if forgiving someone means saying what they did was okay, but it doesn't. Forgiveness isn't about them, it's about you. It's about choosing freedom over bitterness. It's about releasing the story of yourself as victim so you can step into the story of yourself as sovereign, as powerful, as someone who's been hurt but isn't defined by that hurt, who's experienced betrayal but hasn't let it destroy their capacity for trust. Some of you are about to experience reunions with people, with parts of yourself, with dreams you abandoned, with possibilities you stopped believing in. And those reunions, those returns, they're going to feel miraculous. They're going to restore something in you that's been missing. They're going to make you whole in ways you forgot were possible. Because what's coming back isn't just the person or dream or possibility itself, it's your faith, your hope, your belief that good things can happen, that love is real, that effort matters, that you're not alone in this. And maybe you've been cynical. Maybe you've been protecting yourself through not hoping, through not letting yourself want things too much because wanting has led to disappointment so many times before. But cynicism is just disappointed idealism. It's the armor you put on when being open hurt too much. And what if it's safe to take that armor off now? What if the conditions that made protection necessary have shifted? What if you can afford to hope again? This reflection invites you to consider, what would you let yourself want if you truly believed wanting it wouldn't lead to pain? There's urgency here because windows don't stay open forever, because courage fades if you don't act on it, because opportunities that exist today might not exist tomorrow. Not because the universe is punishing delay, but because energy moves, circumstances shift. The conditions that make certain breakthroughs possible are temporary. And if you don't move when the door is open, when the path is clear, when the invitation is extended, you might find yourself having to wait for the next cycle, the next opening, the next moment when transformation becomes possible. And you can wait. You can always wait. But waiting has a cost. Every day you delay is a day you spend in the old reality, the old patterns, the old pain, the old limitations. And yes, transformation is scary. Yes, breakthrough requires risk. Yes, moving through open doors means leaving behind what's familiar. But staying put isn't safety, it's just slow suffocation. For those of you involved with someone who's been distant or unavailable or confused, they're about to make a move. They're about to show you what they actually feel. They're about to drop the pretense and the protection and the carefully maintained distance. And when they do, when they finally let you see how much you've mattered, how long they've been wanting you, how scared they've been of the intensity of their own feelings, it's going to be overwhelming for both of you. And you'll have a choice in that moment to meet them in that vulnerability, to let yourself feel what you've been protecting yourself from feeling, to risk believing them, even though believing means potentially being hurt if they can't sustain the honesty they're offering, or to protect yourself, to stay defended, to not let the wall down even when they're standing there with their heart in their hands. There's no wrong choice, but there are different consequences. And you need to be clear about what you actually want, not what you think you should want, not what would make you look good or seem evolved, but what you, in the deepest part of yourself, actually desire. Because this moment, this breakthrough, this explosion of possibility, it's asking you to choose, to commit, to stop straddling the line between what was and what could be and actually plant your feet in one reality or the other. It can seem as if you've been keeping all your options open, not fully in or fully out of anything, one foot in each possibility, hedge betting, and that strategy has protected you from full disappointment. But it's also prevented you from full satisfaction, from real commitment, from the deep fulfillment that only comes when you stop managing risk and actually give yourself completely to something. This reflection invites you to consider, what would full commitment to what you actually want look like, and what are you afraid would happen if you gave it? Some of you are going to experience healing you didn't think was possible: physical healing, emotional healing, spiritual healing. The kind where you wake up one day and realize the pain you've been carrying for months or years is just gone, not managed, not reduced, gone. And you won't know exactly when it left. You won't be able to point to the specific moment it released. You'll just notice its absence. And in that noticing, in that space where suffering used to be, you'll find possibility you couldn't access while you were in pain. Because pain takes up space, it consumes bandwidth, it demands attention and energy. And when it finally releases, when healing actually happens, all that energy becomes available for other things: for creation, for connection, for joy, for the pursuit of what you actually want rather than just the management of what hurts. There's also something here about recognition, about being seen for who you actually are rather than who people have projected onto you, about your gifts finally being acknowledged, about your value finally being understood, about the work you've been doing in obscurity finally getting noticed. And that recognition, when it comes, might feel validating and destabilizing at the same time. Because part of you has wanted this, has needed this external confirmation that you're not delusional, that you do have something to offer, that your contributions matter. But another part of you might be scared of visibility, of what being seen means, of the responsibility that comes with recognition, of how your life will change when you can no longer hide in obscurity. It may feel as though everything is accelerating, like time is moving faster, like things that should take months are happening in days, like the normal pace of change has been overridden by something more urgent. And that's not your imagination. When you reach certain thresholds, when conditions align in particular ways, when your internal readiness meets external opportunity, things do move faster. The lag between intention and manifestation decreases. The gap between wanting and receiving shrinks. What used to feel impossible suddenly feels inevitable. And that acceleration, while exciting, can also be disorienting, can make you feel like you're losing control, can trigger anxiety about whether you can handle what's coming, about whether you're actually ready for what you've been asking for, about whether you've made a mistake by wanting this in the first place. But you're ready. You wouldn't be here reading this in this moment if you weren't ready. The fact that you clicked on this message, that something in you recognized its importance, that's evidence of readiness. That's your soul saying, yes, I can handle this. Yes, I want this. Yes, I'm prepared for what's about to unfold, even if my conscious mind is scared. So trust that. Trust the part of you that knew to be here. Trust the intuition that said this matters. Trust that you've been preparing for this breakthrough even when you didn't know you were preparing. Every challenge you've survived, every disappointment you've metabolized, every time you chose growth over comfort, every moment you stayed when leaving would have been easier. All of that has been building capacity. All of that has been making you ready for exactly this. This reflection invites you to consider what would you need to believe about yourself